Hey, good morning. It's so awesome to be here. And of course, I'm Dr. Julie Two Moon, and I wanted to pop in because there's been this recent scientific article published that is driving me nuts. So I wanted to have a little conversation about it. So health experts have now declared that normal human body temperature is not 98.6. That as they see that the consistency is that the average is declining, that when they assess people, body temperature averages are going down. What we know from that is now that, well, they're saying what we know is that now humans are changing and body temperature is going down and it's normal. Well, I'm here to tell you guys it's not normal. You know, this is the way that science explains a rapid decline in human health by saying that it's actually a normal gauge. Because guess what? If you go to the doctor, the odds are, any of you watching this have been told, you know, your temperature is 97.2, 97.4, maybe even a little bit lower than that. And the doctor never says anything about it, right? They just go like, okay, you know, they check it and they move on. And this is a big misservice. I'm telling you right now that you're not being served in medicine when that happens, because a normal body temperature is 98.6 to actually 99. So now we've entered this phase where because medicine doesn't know how to deal with it, because they're not willing to pay attention to what it means, because they have no solutions, what they're doing is they're telling you that it's actually normal. Not that you've already been being told that, because your doctors don't even pay attention to it. And so it's this big tragedy, if you want to know the truth, because here's the reality. Your body temperature is supposed to be 98.6 to 99. That's normal. That's where all of your enzymes are meant to function. That's the temperature that your organ systems were designed for. That's the temperature that your body is reflecting a state of vitality in. And what we can see by the fact that it's become so common that now they've decided to call it normal is that they're lowering the bar of human health. Because the reality is when your body temperature isn't at 98.6 to 99, you actually cannot have hormonal balance. You can't have good digestive function. Your liver won't work right. You definitely have a low thyroid condition. You are operating on stress. You are not getting fed the right balance of foods. You are guaranteed to have inflammation. It necessarily indicates, without any doubt whatsoever, that your body is only being fueled on stress hormones alone. That's a really critical state of function, because the reality is that a body that's functioning on stress hormones lacks the ability to be adaptive. It cannot detoxify. It cannot digest. It cannot be nourished. And so they're accepting that a normal state of function is a very limited state of function. And they're telling people, they're telling you that that's totally okay. But is it? Is that really okay? Do you want to subscribe to the idea that very limited function with very low cellular potential, with almost no thyroid communication, with limited digestive capacity is normal? I don't think that's the future you want. I mean, you're here in this group because there's a part of you that knows that this is not right. Being tired, being exhausted, having pain, having autoimmune diseases, having inflammation, that those aren't normal states. And yet medicine is adopting a practice by which they're going to quantify a lot of that as completely normal, because your body temperature is a huge indicator of the state of your cells. I really want you to hear that. The state of your cells. See, everything in the body is dictated by how well the cells can function. Because beyond the organ systems, beyond the hormonal systems, there are cells. And those cells have to be able to send messages, take in nutrients, produce energy, detoxify. And if they can't do any of that, guess what? There is no health potential. And I see this all the time. It's even bleeding over into the natural community, because doctors are putting you on protocols and you get a little bit of change, but in the end, your temperature is staying low. Because I know this because A, I've been in medicine 20 years, but B, when people come to me, they've already been on protocols for the adrenals, for the gut, to treat SIBO, to do all of these things, and their body temperature is still ranging low. The only time I ever see someone with a body temperature that ranges to normal is when their stress response is so acute that it's propping that up. And to come with that, we see an elevated pulse rate as well. You guys, What kind of world is it when we start to actually equate low function to normal? The thing is that if you want sustained vitality, that body temperature better come up and stay up. Because if it doesn't, there's no way you get sustained vitality. It's actually impossible. Body temperature reflects the cells producing heat when they're producing energy. So if your cells cannot produce said heat by producing said energy, then you're existing on stress hormones. And that means that your body's adapting to lower and lower and lower biological function. Here's the irony. We totally stay upright and moving through our life when we're working on very low energy because those stress hormones are really potent. And so they let us have the veneer of actually having energy, having something to fuel ourselves on, when in fact, there's nothing replenishing it. Because the reality is that if you're driving on stress hormones, there's a couple of things that are happening in your body, irregardless of if you're taking supplements, if you're eating quote unquote clean, if you're exercising, if you're even trying to sleep. There's a couple of things that are happening regardless. Number one is when our body runs on stress hormones, it makes significantly less energy. It's an adaptive mechanism. So unfortunately, the longer we stay there, the lower and lower the function of the cells get. You actually almost shut off your mitochondria. And this is a huge deal because aging is directly related to how functional these base cellular aspects are, these base cellular organelles. So that's one thing. The other thing is that when you run on stress, you automatically, this has been studied over and over and over, that when we run on stress, we digest, one of the first things the body ends up doing is digesting the thymus. So you end up with almost no immunity. So what's going to happen? You're going to either be ill a lot, and then after a while, when your body kind of grows tired of trying to defend you, you'll actually find that you don't get acutely ill as often, but you start to develop signs of chronic illness. That's where things like diabetes, arthritis, autoimmune diseases, and cancer come in. So there's this paradigm where you tread water through these various stages. And unfortunately, the end result for all of them is the same. Now, back in like the 1930s or 40s, we addressed body temperature in medicine as like a primary key indicator. And guess what they found? When they worked to restore cell energy and raise body temperature back to 98.6, they eliminated heart disease. There were no further heart attacks in the patient populations of doctors who paid attention to that parameter. They saw dramatically lower rates of cancer. They saw dramatically lower rates of rapid aging. They didn't see autoimmune disease. They didn't see inflammatory conditions. And yet now they're saying, oh, but that's not a factor. Now body temperature suddenly doesn't matter because the trend is that it's going down. And it's only going down because we're existing in chronic perpetual states of stress. That's the nature of the modern world. I will say that's the nature of this Western modern world, is that we're living on stress. We don't even perceive it anymore is the other bigger problem. I talk to women all the time who say, well, I don't know that I'm stressed. I mean, I think I might be, but I'm so calm. That's an adaptive state of stress. I can guarantee you, I haven't yet met a woman who isn't operating on stress. And if you want to check this out for yourself, start monitoring your body temperature and your pulse rate. If your body temperature is ranging below 98.6 to 99 and your pulse rate is ranging low, I guarantee you, you've got cells that are barely making it through the day. They're rerouting every bit of energy to keep you upright because there are no reserves, there is no plan, and there's no way to keep you going. And so they're compressing into smaller and smaller spheres of influence. And as a result, your organ systems are functioning at lower and lower capacities. Now, I said the one variable can be that if you find your temperatures high, the likelihood is you're going to find you have a pulse rate above 80 because you're actually currently using stress hormones in an acute way to push your body forward, and or toxicity is doing that to you. The real reality is that the normal body temperature is 98.6. It is a base parameter of if you're healthy or not. And I see this all the time. So if you're a woman who's suffering from fatigue or frustration, insomnia, pain, inflammation, autoimmune disease, and your body temperature is low, that is the thing that needs to be solved, because what it points at right there is that you have absolutely diminished cell potential. From that place, doesn't matter if you think you're eating clean or taking great supplements or you're doing somebody's protocol. If it is not changing your body temperature, you're staying there for good. And it's not enough to just take thyroid hormone in this situation, because the problem is that I see a lot of people doing this. Like, they're being given thyroid hormone, but nothing's being done to change the state of the function of the cell. So unfortunately, it actually only aggravates the stress response. And so it will not work to raise that body temperature, because I know a lot of you hear hypothyroid and you're like, let's go get on hormones. And if you can find someone to prescribe them to you, which some people do, like I've heard people say that their naturopath said, well, do you want to try hormones? I mean, we could. I mean, it's the weirdest thing to me, because there's no clinical data-based decision-making in that statement. But if you find someone who's willing to give you hormones, but they've done nothing to repair the cell patterns, let me tell you this, you're actually setting yourself up for even more danger. So I don't suggest you go that route. It is actually extremely negative to do to your body, because it's like you're pressing the accelerator, but you haven't put any gas in the tank. And so you're going to end up grinding the body into a further state of exhaustion. This is why we have to know the full picture. So your body temperature and pulse really matter. And then we have to understand where your cells are actually stuck. That's why this can't be done like one size. It's not like there's one remedy. Like, oh, you have low body temperature, just do X. There isn't one remedy, because it's too complex for that. There are like 100 different nuanced problems that could be contributing to the cells not being able to sustain an energetic state of function. Part of what I see that really breaks my heart in medicine and in the world of blogs and health coaches is that we're diminishing the complexity of the body down to one or two things to try to make it easy for people to self-digest and self-diagnose. But in the process, people are wasting years and years thinking that they're on point when they're not. So there isn't a one thing solution. If there was, you guys, I'd just lay it out and you could go do it. That just isn't how the body works. This is why people have spent thousands of years studying how the human body works and still don't know exactly everything. Because it is the most divine, intricate, beautiful, complicated structure that has ever been created. So we cannot diminish it by calling these changes so diminutive that I just need to do celery juice, or I just need to do green smoothies, or I bet I just need to take the superfood or swallow some adaptogens. Those are methods that will waste your time and your energy. And the bigger problem is that they often drive the problem deeper, because you cannot just push the body to make more energy. You actually have to cultivate a relationship with the cells and nourish them into restoration in a way that reflects the needs of your particular system. And this model where now we're diminishing the amplitude of human health by saying very little vitality is normal. We're rewriting human history at this point. Because at that point, you'll never walk into a doctor's office and have them pay attention to what's really going on. They're going to paint over at the surface with ridiculous band-aids and ridiculous attention to non-essential details, while the real problem is festering underneath. This is why the only thing I've dedicated my entire practice and life to at this point is showing you how to elevate your cells out of the pit. Because in the end, it's the only thing that matters. So I encourage you to start self-assessing this. Take your body temperature numerous times during the day, over the course of a couple days. Take your pulse rate with it. If you find that you're ranging below 98.6 to 99 as you go through the day with a pulse rate that is, 50, 60, which is also another sign of extremely low vitality, you know that there's a deep problem, and it is the root that must be addressed, because if those parameters don't change, there is no hope for your body restoring itself or healing. Just to be brutally honest, any plan that is not addressing the cell is not addressing the problem. If you find that your temperature is good and you think for a moment, I'm golden, I suggest you check your pulse rate, because I find in nearly 100% of those cases that the pulse then is ranging well into the mid 80s to the high 80s to the hundreds. You guys, I see women all the time who have pulses in the hundreds and a temperature that's 98.6. Now, the one other variable can be if you happen to be lucky enough in the middle of winter, I say that because I'm in Michigan, to live in a place that is warm, you will have an artificial raise because of the exterior temperature. So I suggest you make sure that you check when you're in like an air-conditioned, temperature-controlled environment, because it makes a big difference. But at the root of it, the reason why they're lowering the parameter is because at this point, nearly 98% of the population is exhibiting body temperatures that are below the norm. And so instead of saying, wow, we've got a really big problem here, because what does body temperature represent? Enzyme function, hormone function, cell-to-cell communication, organ function, detoxification, digestion, cardiovascular health, brain health. That's another huge one, you guys. Your brain is designed to function at this 98.6. It has to do complex neurological functions every single day. And if your body temperature is down in the 97s, your brain is already on mute. So instead of saying, oh my gosh, we've got a big problem, let's solve this, medicine has taken the road of no action by saying, oh, low body temperature is totally normal, and accepting it. And as a result, they're literally locking you into a path where no one's going to address it. No one's going to pay attention to it. And that's going to mean that all your hopes of having energy back, of finding your joy, of finding that motivation again, it's a huge classic sign of low functioning cells is that you think you're lazy. You think you're low on motivation. You're not low on motivation. You have a body that isn't producing enough energy to do anything but make you put one foot in front of the other and get through the day. That's the reality of the situation. It's not something that you aren't convincing yourself to do. It's your biology. Your biology is faltering because we are living in a world where we're never not being stressed. We're living in a world where most of us have been taught the worst possible organization around food ever. And as a result, we're literally starving ourselves and we don't even know it. Even all those clean plans, I can tell you guys that every time I hear someone say they eat clean, I start to shudder because I really think, oh no, they're on that train of I'm eating clean, so this must be okay. It's the same with the supplement world. I can tell you a lot of supplements and a lot of drugs actually lower your body temperature because they're stressing the body and they're creating a bigger problem. These are all changeable things. The one thing you have to be ready to pay attention to is getting to the root of it at the cell. The only healing that matters is cell healing. The only thing that matters is that your cells feel nourished and taken care of. The only thing that matters is that your cells feel like they have access to the nutrients and the information that is needed for your body to do self-repair. Because the other thing I also know is your body is wise beyond belief. And it has a template for perfect function. That temperature is part of that template. The pulse rate is part of that template. The only time we don't represent that ability to have perfect function is when we're not partnering with it because we were never taught. It's not something that you're to blame for. I can tell you that 98% of what's written out there is an absolute crock. It's not oriented on cell restoration. It's not oriented on bringing you back to vitality. It's oriented on sort of shock and awe. It's like shock the body to get it to do something dramatically different so that you can think that you've made a temporary change. That's the problem with cutting calories. That's the problem with cutting carbohydrates. That's the problem with keto. That's the problem with intermittent fasting. They're all methods to enhance the stress response because guess what? When we enhance the stress response, there's always this temporarily dramatic change. It's the same thing that happens when we take stimulants like Adderall or phentermine. Is that they temporarily make us believe that the situation has changed. We produce those same chemicals inside of our own body. So when we trigger them enough, we get this dramatic shift and we think, oh, that's it. But the reality is you're actually just enacting more wear down, more destruction, lower and lower cell function. And at the end of the day, the only thing that matters in your body is what is the state of your cells. It is it. That is the only parameter that matters because it will predict whether You create inflammatory byproducts of cell metabolism that's based on stress hormones. Those byproducts are things like lactic acid and nitric oxide and ammonia. It will predict whether you exist in a high estrogen state and therefore have a terrible time going through menopause, or have an increased risk of cancer and a dramatically increased risk of inflammation. It will predict whether your body can metabolize and use minerals correctly. If that stress response is high enough, you will not incorporate calcium into the right places. It will show up as plaquing in your arteries. It will be robbed from your bones, and you will have those things to deal with too. If that stress response isn't dealt with, you will end up insulin resistant. You will end up with diabetes. And there's a good chance you'll end up with Alzheimer's, because we know that that is an insulin resistant state in the brain. That's because of stress hormones triggering cell rigidity, which non-responsive to thyroid and not incorporating glucose. It's all related. And this one parameter is so key in understanding this base level of function. And yet, unfortunately, science has just declared that it doesn't matter. So I don't want you to get stuck in that trap where you accept lower and lower and lower levels of function, and you accept limited levels of vitality, and you start to change the line of what's normal in your life. Because that's another big tragedy I see, is that we get so used to feeling like crap that we start to go, well, maybe it's my age. You know, maybe I'm expecting too much. You know, I did have a good week last week. You know, I hear that all the time. It's like this, we get so numb to it that we start to placate ourselves with mediocre scraps of life. And then the longer we do that, it's like 6 months passes, a year, 10 years. Suddenly, you know, people are feeling 80 years old when they're 50, and they're accepting it as normal because so many of the people around them are so sick that what they're comparing themselves to sucks. So I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to end up in that boat. When I work with people, our goal is to restore the cell energy first. From there, you can balance the rest of the body with ease. But if you don't start with the cell, you're going to end up placing Band-Aid after Band-Aid after Band-Aid on system after system after system. I can't tell you the number of people I've worked with who've already done 6 adrenal protocols, 4 SIBO protocols. You know, they've been treating their Lyme disease for 30 years. They've taken thyroid everything. They've done the detox. They've done the metal cleanse, and they're still sick. You guys, there's a reason for that. Because everybody went to these systems in the surface and they never bothered to go to the cell. And as a result, these people have spent years and years, and I'm talking $50,000 in some cases, spinning those wheels, never getting anywhere because the poor cells are still suffocating underneath all of that. And every time they did another one of those aggressive protocols, their cells dropped to an even lower place of function. Now they're even deeper into the pit than they were before. And that's the tragedy. Is that it's like we're looking in all the wrong places, and because of that we're sequestering our health to some time at no time in the future, and we're diminishing our body vitality to the point where it's going to be almost impossible to find. And that's not living. I know that's not what you came here for. It's certainly not what I came here for. So if you want help, if you want to know, well, how do I feed my cells? How do I get my vitality back? How do I stop chasing symptoms? How do I do all of this? Then you should set up time to talk with me. And we can see what's happening in your body. And we can see where are you on that spectrum and what needs to be done to fix it. And we can talk about what restoration looks like. All right? So don't believe the hype. Normal body temperature is still 98.6 to 99. I don't care what the news says. I can guarantee you that that is normal, and what they're promoting is absolutely false, and I don't want you to fall for it because it is a crock. All right, guys. Hey, many blessings. You're welcome to comment on the video if you have questions. You're welcome to set up time with me. I want you to be alive again, because we need a world full of women that can hold their place and stand and nourish and have that power and that vitality. We need it now more than ever. And people with low body temperature and people with low vitality are more content to sit in a chair, scroll through their phone, or get comfortable with Netflix. I don't think that's living. All right, guys, blessings.